2 weeks ago, he tweeted that he is now somehow feeling optimistic after the guy he despised and the movement he has opposed with his whole heart and soul just won. He wrote, quote, "I've been trying to figure out why I'm more optimistic now than I was before the election, even though I was so against the guy who won. I know now. MAGA is not my mortal enemy, and neither is the extreme left. My mortal enemy is the establishment, and they have been defeated."
In this video, Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire reacts to Cenk Uygur's sudden desire for a truce with the right. Matt Walsh reacts to some clips of Cenk Uygur ranting about Donald Trump being a fascist and Nazi and warns conservatives to beware of the grift. With that, let's watch Matt Walsh crush Cenk Uygur's recent change of heart.
In recent months, especially since Trump's win, but even before that, we've seen some well-known figures on the left move to the right. Now, although in basically every case, they'll deny that they're moving to the right. Instead, they'll say something like, "The left left me," which always turns out to be at most only partially true, but also partially their way of not having to actually admit that they were wrong about something. So you probably remember Mika and Joe on Morning Joe solemnly explaining their decision to go to Mar-a-Lago and meet with Donald Trump. They said that they agreed to restart communications with Trump and find common ground in order to heal our national divides and put an end to political warfare. Watch.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was tearful, he was upbeat, he seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we? 5 years of political warfare has deeply divided Washington and the country. We have been as clear as we know how in expressing our deep concerns about President Trump's actions and words in the coarsening of public debate. But for nearly 80 million Americans, election denialism, public trials, and January 6th were not as important as the issues that moved them to send Donald Trump back to the White House with their vote. Joe and I realize it's time to do something different, and that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
So they talk about this meeting as if it was Lee and Grant at Appomattox or something. In reality, it doesn't actually matter whether Morning Joe gets along with Trump or not. They have zero impact on the country either way. But in any case, before, that was still them sort of moderating a bit. And before Morning Joe's big kumbaya moment, there were other examples of this sort of thing. Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks had been.
Can we talk about the grace of Donald Trump for a minute? The fact that he would actually host Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough after they have spent, I don't know how much time saying the most vile possible things they can about him is something I don't know if a lot of people could do. I don't know if people could forgive like that. And the crazy thing is, Trump is not known as being a guy who doesn't hold on to grudges, you know? But as Matt Walsh just said, I think that Mika and Joe characterized the meeting like, like he was saying, like some heads of state meeting or something like that. When in reality, Trump was just being nice to let them come to his place and reconnect. So unsurprisingly, these two, I believe, are acting way more important than they really are. And I think they believe that they're way more important than they really are. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
Been making the rounds for months, criticizing the left for its excesses. Of course, somebody like Bill Maher has been doing the same thing for much longer. And there are several other examples of this kind of thing. And these are all different people and different cases that shouldn't necessarily all be thrown into the same basket. But I do have some concerns about this now familiar routine of leftists seeing the light, or sort of seeing it, and then being immediately embraced by many on the right, even celebrated and amplified as voices of reason. And I think the best way to explain my concerns is to point to another one of these newly minted voices of reason. This one also comes to us courtesy of the Young Turks. In fact, it is the creator of the show, Cenk Uygur. Now, Cenk has been a passionate, some would say vicious, unhinged, hysterical critic of Trump and MAGA and conservatives generally for many, many years. And yet, 2 weeks ago, he tweeted that he is now somehow feeling optimistic after the guy he despised and the movement he has opposed with his whole heart and soul just won. He wrote, quote, "I've been trying to figure out why I'm more optimistic now than I was before the election, even though I was so against the guy who won. I know now. MAGA is not my mortal enemy, and neither is the extreme left. My mortal enemy is the establishment, and they have been defeated." Now, despite being a far-left commentator who has demonized conservatives for literally decades, he now says that MAGA is not his enemy. The establishment is his enemy. In other tweets and comments, he's called for unity between the two sides. He's criticized the extreme left, or as he now apparently calls them, the max left, and has assured us that if the folks on both sides can unite against the villainous establishment, we will be invincible. Last week, he appeared on the PBD podcast to explain this new approach, which he won't really admit is a new approach, but even so, here you go.
I actually really appreciate this warning from Matt Walsh because as someone who does this daily, every time Cenk or Anna or anybody on the left has said something logical, I've always praised them. I've always said, hey, I don't like them a lot, but I'll give credit where credit is due. And after I watched this clip, I thought about why am I praising them so much after all the nastiness that's come from them in the past. And I decided it's because my bar for people like TYT is so low for rationality and logical statements that if they said anything remotely logical, I was like, hey, at least they're telling the truth, saying the right thing here. But I also think as a party, the right is more welcoming. And I think overall, I'm not saying everybody, but overall, more kind and loving, which is a good thing. But we also can't be naive and made to look like a fool later after they say, haha, we were just BSing the whole time. You guys look stupid. So I appreciate Matt Walsh for kind of putting this beware of the grift idea out there. So speaking for myself personally, I don't just welcome everyone to our side with open arms, and I think about what are their motivations behind this. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
Here's what my left-wing friends don't understand. They think you guys are all MAGA, and MAGA means it's a cult, and you're never going to disagree with Trump. You're never going to disagree with each other, and that you are like their father's Republicans. But you're not their father's Republicans. And so our side, I've been trying to get them to realize that Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, all these folks that take the money, they're not on your side. They're on the establishment side, right? And guys, today, I think that, we could do something historic. I think that we could actually unite the left flank and the right flank. And I've got a model for how to do that, and I want to run it by you guys. Before, when I battled the right wing, it was a wall, right? I was just like, nobody's listening to one another. They're just doing talking points. I hated it. And then MAGA looked like they were 100%. I'll be honest. I mean, in 2020, I was super pissed. And I said, look, I don't want to talk to Trump supporters. All I hear is the same thing. Trump, 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 Trump. And they never waver. So what I'm saying to the left now is, no, I'm seeing something new and different here. The MAGA base has changed. Okay, that doesn't mean they don't like Trump. It doesn't mean that they're not right wing. But there is a significant portion of the MAGA base now that is, in my opinion, right wing populists who are actually anti-establishment, actually anti-corruption, actually anti-war. And what I'm trying to tell the left is, take the win. Take the win. We've been standing opposed here for 20 years, trying to cut the Pentagon, trying to be anti-war, getting money out of politics. If people say yes, for God's sake, that's our lost tribe. Those are our right-wing brothers and sisters who are Americans, who are populists, who agree with us. Let's go fight the establishment together, because if we're united, they cannot stop us.
Brothers and sisters. Very nice sentiment. Cenk says that he has a plan. In fact, he said in the interview he had a plan to unite us all. He's all about unity. And he says that the MAGA base has changed. Now it is actually anti-establishment, anti-corruption, and anti-war. But, there's some rather significant problems here. And the first and most obvious.
If you like watching videos like this one, like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video.
Is that the MAGA base has always been anti-establishment, anti-corruption, and anti-war. Those have been by far the defining features of the base from day one. But Cenk pretends that this was only a recent development so that, again, he can avoid actually admitting that he was wrong. In fact, he goes further. He takes credit. He pretends that the MAGA base has come to him, that this is a left-wing win, basically. Now, the other problem, and it's a big one, is that Cenk extends this olive branch to Trump's supporters and praises them for their stand against corruption and war. But here's what he was saying about Donald Trump as recently as last October.
He's a dictator. He's a fascist. That's not hyperbole. So, and here I'll upset a bunch of people on the left. Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley are not fascists. They're terrible people for other reasons, but they've never done a coup against America. They don't use direct Nazi quotes that Trump does. The only fascist that is an actual threat to democracy is Donald J. Trump. He already tried to end this democracy once. And guys, last thing. The other day, he said, immigrants are poisoning the blood of our nation. That quote has only been used by Adolf Hitler and Donald J. Trump. So he's telling you ahead of time, I'm a Nazi. It's not like I didn't warn you. I used absurd Hitler quotes. I pulled them out of history and I said them for no reason, just to let you know I am a Nazi.
Something that I thought about that made me heed Matt Walsh's advice and beware of the grift is not only can we not forget all the times he said Donald Trump is Hitler, Nazi, dictator, going to end democracy, but just as importantly, if not more importantly, he said that to you if you are a conservative. And I include myself in that group. So he has stared into the camera and said that you're an idiot and you're in a cult and you're a drone. So like I said, I think forgiveness is a good thing, but we don't forget and we tread lightly if there ever is going to be any kind of reconciliation. And I just want to echo Matt's point that, yeah, do you notice one thing you don't hear from Cenk, like when he was on the PBD podcast, is any humility or remorse or any kind of apology. That's why I said you have to take these on an individual basis, because Anna Kasparian, where, again, I'm still going to be vigilant and have my antenna up for potential grift-like ways, but when I see her interviewed, I really see a difference in her. And unlike Cenk, I see her acknowledge specific ways she was wrong and even apologize when it's appropriate. And it seems authentic to me. So don't get me wrong, she doesn't get some free pass from me or anything, but it's very different from what Cenk's saying. Like he said on the PBD podcast, I have a plan how we can unify everyone. Cenk, you just decided that you like us now. Nobody's looking for you to make a plan. Why don't you just sit back and listen? Anyway, let's get back to the video.
Issues, but they won't admit it. At the very least, these are people who ignored and probably scoffed at and demeaned the conservatives who told them that the left was on a slippery slope into madness. They didn't listen. So at the very least, they were wrong about that. But they won't admit that either. And yet they show up and they have all their ideas, and we're supposed to listen to them. And they even have the gumption to turn around to conservatives who have been in this movement forever and try to lecture them and say, oh, no, I'll tell you how to really argue on these issues. What the hell do you know? You've been wrong about everything. You just started being sort of right about a few things 10 seconds ago. Maybe have some humility and shut up and listen for a few. You haven't listened at all your entire life. Maybe you should be listening now. So what all this tells us at best is that these people still have all of the same arrogance and ignorance that made them radical leftists in the first place. It also tells us that these are not credible voices we should be listening to or taking seriously. Not everybody is a thought leader. Okay, not everyone has a platform with a large audience. In fact, most people don't. And if you've been wrong about everything and are still too arrogant to even admit it, even while you try to cozy up to the people you've demonized for years, then you should certainly be in the non-thought leader crowd. Okay, especially considering that about 99% of the people who are not thought leaders on our side are vastly more equipped for the role than you are. But of course, this is all just...
Yeah, Matt just said much more articulately than I did exactly what my last sentiment was. Think about it, in any job or any organization, and even, yes, a political party or political ideology, you take time to build up your reputation and earn a spot as, like he said, a thought leader or a speaker somewhere. And doesn't it kind of seem like Cenk wants to be that guy immediately? It's like, dude, like I said, you build up your reputation over time, and while we're appreciative that you have reconsidered your views on the right, your reputation with us ain't too good. So why don't you just sit back and listen for a while? But we want to hear from you. What do you guys think? Are we too quick to embrace folks like Cenk who've had this sudden change of heart? And why do you think we're seeing so much of it? Is it because it'll get them more clicks, more views, or business related some other way? Let us know what you think in the comments. Anyway, as always, really appreciate you watching, and we will see you on the next one.